5th episode of Joshing Around, and I appreciate you guys that have been following me so far. If you guys just saw the B-roll there, some companies sent me some goods this week, so I had to try those out. So thank you to the Genius brand, which is killing it on Amazon. We had Method Performance, ex-Muscle Farm people that I'd like to support. They're doing some gaming positioning for their supplement brand, Out Hustle, which sent me that cool coffee can. So I want to thank everybody for those gifts this week. I had a clip a few episodes ago on Joshing Around where I did a mail time. Looks like a lot of companies really like that, and they wanted to send me some stuff, so I do appreciate that. If you guys want to send me anything, make sure you guys contact me through social media, anything, emails down below. I'd be glad to support any brands that are doing great things out there with the consumer packaged goods market. These are not always brands that I work with, but just brands that have reached out to me. Either I have a friend there, I know some people that used to work there, or they just kind of like what I'm doing and they want to support me a little bit. So I appreciate you guys for doing that. This episode, I don't really have anything like crazy from a travel perspective or anything like that. I have a lot of different meetings and work things here in Austin, Texas. I kind of thought this was going to be a little bit of a slow week in terms of things that I could show you guys. So I made sure I prepped ahead. I asked for some questions on my LinkedIn, and also had another question that was asked to me that can, give you guys a little bit of a sense of why I do consulting or how I got into consulting. So sit back, relax. Hopefully you guys like this episode.
In between the space paths made of time and place, silence gets so loud to strangers in the...
All right, guys, so if you weren't following me on social media this week, you didn't see that I requested some questions from my connections. I did this week on LinkedIn, but every couple weeks I'll probably do it on a different platform. So all the links are below. Make sure you guys are following me on those. But the first question that I wanted to answer is one that I get a lot, and that is kind of how I got into consulting and kind of why I got into consulting. So this actually had started back when I was maybe in high school, maybe a little bit earlier than that. My dad was an entrepreneur. He sparked an interest in me to kind of take more of an interest in the business, and I was lucky enough not only to do some of the front of the house kind of like remedial type of jobs, but he also gave me access to a lot of like the back end part of the business, and it really gave me the opportunity to see business at an early age, and that's kind of like where everything kind of took as a starting off point to me. And then in undergrad I studied accounting. I thought that was kind of the best place for me to be at. A lot of people told me understanding the back end or the numbers was kind of the most important or most overlooked thing for entrepreneurship, and it was one of those things where I thought, hey, I'm really good with numbers and kind of go with that. So I was lucky enough to get a tier 1 internship with Deloitte in their international tax strategy department, and we did a lot of things that were similar to like the Paradise Papers that maybe people are familiar with, but that kind of just gave me a jumping off point. And then after I had that internship, this is when things kind of shifted more towards consumer products. It's kind of an early adopter with a lot of things, and I was jumping on internet forums, one of them being bodybuilding.coms, and had the opportunity to interact with a lot of companies. And that was kind of the early days. This was 2007, when companies were looking for quote unquote like company reps or whatever you want to say. And essentially what that was you were kind of like being their customer service arm on that platform. So that was kind of what shifted me into consumer products. I was doing that for a while, and during that time I wanted to do essentially what I do now. I remember I finished up my MBA, and I wanted to work for the company that I was doing stuff with the bodybuilding.com forums. And I kind of pitched an idea of kind of being a consultant or a strategy person early on, and unfortunately I was kind of pointing it in a direction to say that that's not that realistic in the nutritional supplement world at the time. And so I left, and I kind of went off and got some other experience. And it wasn't until a startup called Muscle Farm kind of brought me back into everything about a year and a half after I graduated with my MBA. And I had the opportunity to really work closely with their executive team, and it gave me a great learning experience. And my personality is that I will kind of grab whatever I can and learn, and love kind of jumping into the deep end, and that's kind of how I learn everything. So I was given the opportunity to do a lot of different diverse things at Muscle Farm, And I kind of transitioned that into consulting. While I was at some conferences and trade shows and things like that, I had a lot of people ask me questions. Unfortunately, those questions were things that I couldn't answer just because they're a conflict of interest. But I always kind of kept that in the back of my mind just because I always knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to help a lot of different businesses. And when I was getting at the end of the time that I spent at Muscle Farm, I decided to open up a consulting company, and a lot of those people that were initially asking me questions were my first clients. I was lucky enough to have some people right off the bat, and they were all kind of in the nutritional supplement space. But these past 6 years or so that I've had the consulting company, I've had a variety of different clients. Some that were outside of consumer products. Most of them are in consumer products. I would say at this point, most of them are kind of based on functional foods, functional beverages, and then nutritional supplements. So why I continue to do it is it's hard for me to imagine a more diverse day-to-day job other than maybe being like the actual entrepreneur of the early stage startup. But I get a variety of clients from pre-revenue to $300, $400, $500 million a year, and those problem sets, dealing with the resources available or anything that's going on in the business are extremely different, and the nuances really interest me. And so each day, I have sets of 10, 20, 30 things that I need to do, and all of them are very different. And I enjoy that. I'm really good at kind of compartmentalizing different projects. Honestly, I just love it. I mean, it's one of those things where I continue to look forward day after day, waking up early, working late. It's just one of those things that I really enjoy. And you guys can obviously see that. I mean, I talk about a lot of the stuff that I do consulting-wise through the content that I create. It's things that get asked or things that get talked about in boardrooms that a lot of people don't share about, and I just am really passionate about it. I really enjoy doing it. So, I think it's going to be one of those things where I'm going to continue to do that over the next several years. Who knows kind of where that goes, and I definitely have a plan that I want to kind of execute on. But at this point, I'm extremely happy with the type of work that I get to do every day. All right, guys, so you just heard me answer the first question in the Q&A, but I'm going to jump into some of these more like industry-specific questions here and try to get through as many as I can. So Ryan Mallett asked, at what point do disruptor brands become classified by the conventional definition of mainstream? Ryan, great question. It's kind of tough because disruptor brand, I don't think there's a consistent definition out there. What I kind of look at is a disruptor of any sort is kind of either a brand, idea, product, whatever that is. And it usually comes down to the usage rate that's in the market. Whenever kind of copycats or other brands in the industry start to use that idea or branding or product or any of those types of things, it no longer becomes a disruption, it becomes kind of conventional. So, to answer your kind of question, I look at kind of from an awareness standpoint. Anytime a disruptor kind of comes out to the market, they have a high amount of awareness. People tend to kind of figure out who they are, what they're doing, those types of things. But a lot of the other brands or kind of competition that's in the market will not adopt some of those ideas or branding or ideas, processes, whatever those are that's disrupting, until they can kind of see that being proved out in a way that is either useful in the market or useful in business. So when that kind of like awareness to usage ratio kind of gets closer and closer to one, that's when I kind of see that disruptor brand or idea or product, process, whatever that is, turning into conventional or mainstream or kind of whatever you describe that as. So thanks again for that question, Ryan. So next question is from my good buddy Anthony Davenport, and he asks, where do you see online third-party resellers of sports nutrition products in the next 2 to 5 years, with the market shifting to either direct-to-consumer and Amazon expanding their portfolio in this category? So thanks for that question, Anthony. I believe you're probably referring as a third-party reseller as like an internet retailer, anybody that's kind of outside of the Amazon or direct-to-consumer model. So that could be brick and mortar or anything like that. Though the trends are super aggressive towards kind of digital adoption, especially in nutritional supplements, it's still a small proportion of the overall market. So I don't see anything like completely blowing up the existing systems in the next 2 to 5 years. I think going towards that 5-year range, things are going to significantly change to the point where people are going to be exposed. And then you asked about Amazon. I think Amazon's strategy in general, it has nothing to do with sports nutrition or nutritional products. It has to do with just the trends of retailing in general. Private label. So I think they're going to continue to aggressively push private label in every category. It doesn't matter what that is. It could be baby food, it could be hardware, it could be appliances, it could be anything at this point, where they can see an opportunity to use the data that they've captured over their huge search engine to leverage some more margins in a category. I think they're going to continue to do that. So I don't see why Amazon won't have several private labels in the sports nutrition industry to target certain categories of buyers, and then they'll kind of extend their Amazon Elements or Basics type of line for considerable amount of future. So I would expect most single ingredient products to have an Amazon Elements or whatever they call it product, but I think more aggressively they're going to push toward brands that aren't so commonplace. I think they took a light swing with P2N private label, but I think that was just kind of something they thought was going to be easy because it's comparable to a Six Star or an Equate or something like that that's at other large retailers. So thanks for that question, Anthony. All right, so next question was from David Paul Miller, and he asked, what do you think are the most important elements for a CPG brand to focus on in its first year of business? Thanks for that question, David. The two things that I kind of always suggest people to do, and I know that I'm deviating a little bit from your question, but I think it's just kind of how my brain works, is it's kind of front of the house and then back of the house. It's just kind of always seems how I approach things. So first of all, I think in the first year of business, most entrepreneurs, if they're not seasoned, they need to really understand their numbers. They need to understand their budget, their cash flows, just things that might seem boring. I've seen more of those things derail businesses in the first year than anything else. And I think if you don't have a good understanding of where you're spending your money, how you're spending your money, and all those types of things, you're not going to be successful in year two because you're going to be cash strapped every single day and kind of always looking to figure out where the heck is all that kind of money going. But kind of moving into kind of the front of the house thing, I think it's reinforcing a lot of the customer messaging or things that are kind of out there on a consistent basis over that first year. I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall into the trap of, because they live and breathe their business every single day, they believe that their customers or potential customers understand things as quick as them in the business. And unfortunately, that's not usually how it goes. So, you need to reinforce your why, you need to reinforce your how, you need to reinforce your where, your who, your what's, like all these different things. You need to reinforce that through, be it your social media, be it any type of marketing, outward things, your internal, cultural things with your employees, whatever that is. Make sure people understand like what is going on and reinforce to the point where they can understand why they are either buying that or why they are putting in so much time each week with you as an entrepreneur to realize your dreams. So reinforcing things at such an aggressive manner, I think, will pay dividends in a couple, year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where you can kind of move to a more casual branding or process to communicating those things, because they've been reinforced through your core customers, and those core customers hopefully will be advocates to help you through the next few years. So again, thanks, David, for that question. Next question from Brad Hunter, and he asks, do in-store experience still matter if products are now ordered online and dropped off in your trunk when you pull up to the store? And he made a note, I know that's still a minority of customers, so you're kind of already going down the path. I mean, obviously at this point, the click and collects, the online buying, all that is still a small proportion of the overall retailing business. It doesn't matter what that category is. So I still think, in-store experiences still matter a lot. Things maybe need to be adapted a little bit to understand, like, if the online buying proportion is getting larger and larger over time, the things that made you successful on the shelves are not going to be needed as much more and more over time. So I think taking an audit every 6 to 12 months of kind of your customer experience pieces would be, extremely, important. I think that, packaging needs obviously are going to change as, things on the shelf are no longer kind of used as billboards. You need to think differently about how that packaging needs to transfer through the supply chain of online. Also, just recreating a lot of those in-store experiences through, be it packaging, be it your online look, feel, all that kind of stuff that's on marketplaces. Making sure that you don't, overthink the change in kind of the buying behavior, because everything can kind of be related back to the in-store experience, but it just needs to be applicable, through internet or through this click and collect. That the customer experience in store is still very paramount. I think, over time you need to kind of think about how that's evolving with the buying behavior of customers in your category. But thanks for that question, Brad. And then last one is going to be from Thomas Major. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Thomas, but he says, what parts of the physical grocery store do you believe will become obsolete in the next 5 to 10 years? 5 to 10 years is a far way out. I think 5 is probably definitely still going to have, much of the same systems that we're dealing with today. Though I think the proportion of online sales will be much bigger. In 5 years, I don't think things will be totally blown up at that point. But 10 years, you're kind of getting to a critical mass where I believe a lot of the online buying 25% of the market, and at that point, there's much different, a look of retailing or grocery stores or anything like that. You're going to see a much different landscape that's out there in terms of how many names are out there, how many stores, what those stores look like, a variety of different things. But you asked which parts of the physical store do you think is going to be obsolete? I think the ones that are going to hold on the longest are going to be the outsides of the market, so like your fresh foods, anything that needs to be refrigerated or frozen. I think a lot of those things are going to be the hardest to move over. I don't think that they're not going to move over. I just think they're going to be the hardest to move over. And then the second kind of category is anything that's extremely heavy but has a low price. So because I think the supply chain side of things have not adapted fast enough to this e-commerce grocery side of things. So I think upwards of 5 years, I think a lot of that's going to be figured out, and I think people are going to be more willing to buy their groceries online, through the full process. They're not even going to have to go through the click and collect process. It's going to be completely delivered to them. But I think going into, like you said, going into 10 years, I think most of those categories, doesn't matter what it is going to be bought, by a large majority of Generation Z, bought by a large majority of millennials, in a large proportion, and those are going to be the vast majority of the buying power that's in America. So I don't see why it wouldn't be 25% plus of the buying e-commerce wise of groceries. So good question. I think though I don't think anything will be completely deleted in the next 10 years, I definitely think a lot of like the things that are in the middle of the grocery store, so your canned, your boxed items, a lot of your snacks and things that have an easier way of shipping. I think those things will be quickly moved over to what we already kind of deal with traditional e-commerce buying. So we'll see, but I think that's a great question. We'll kind of see over time. I don't like to try to predict the future. I just try to look at trends, and I think a lot of those trends are pointing towards the answers that I gave you. So thanks for that question. All right, guys, so I probably do this once every couple of weeks. If you guys are not following me on my social media, all the links are below. This one I asked on LinkedIn, but I might ask the next one on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. It doesn't really matter. I'd like to kind of change these up a little bit. This one was obviously a lot more focused on business, but I have no problem answering more personal questions, whatever. But make sure you guys are following me below, and I think these are fun. I think these are interesting. Keep me on my toes because I try not to research them at all before I jump on camera. Hopefully this week we got the audio-visual things under control, and you guys won't have to worry about too much issues from that perspective. I'm still less than kind of 30 days in on this whole YouTube thing, so I'm trying to learn the best I can. Appreciate everybody that has followed me so far. And if you guys are enjoying a lot of this content that I'm putting out there, make sure you guys are hitting the thumbs up, subscribing to me, maybe even telling a friend, a colleague, whatever.